All right, so now that we've looked at our tools, let's look at our studios really quickly as well. So this first option here is our color studio. You can update your colors, utilize recent colors. You can tap on your swatches and you have a whole bunch of different options within. I have Pantone colors here as well. You can also create your own. You can import a palette. You can import it as a document palette. So you can name the palette and then hit OK. And then using the hamburger, you can import a palette. You can add current fill to palette. You can select the different elements within your artboard here and then add your fills based on that as well. And then you can even use your color picker to pick up colors. And then you can add those. And then you can create your own color palettes within here. So this is really helpful, especially if you have specific color palettes and stories that you're working with when it comes to your specific project. Underneath that is our stroke studio. You'll be able to adjust and edit strokes here. So I'm going to select my pen tool and I'm just going to create a straight line here. And then I'm going to go into my stroke studio and I'm going to adjust the width. And then you'll also be able to change the type. So you can do a plain stroke or you can do a dotted stroke, and you can change your dash pattern here as well, and it'll adjust it. You can adjust your miter limit. You can change the way your dash looks, like if you want it to have a square cap, more of a square dotted, more of a rectangle, or a rounded. You can also adjust and create your own line types if you want to create more of a flowy, more like hand-drawn effect. You can adjust that using the brush, like the brush stroke options here, and you can adjust your pressure. This could be really helpful if you do a lot of line work to be able to edit and adjust based on that. All right, underneath that is our layers studio. This is where all of the different layers are on our artboard. So we have this current artboard. So since we have everything clipped into the artboard, everything is going to be embedded and housed within a drop-down menu. So if we tap on this little caret and it faces downward, you'll be able to see all of the different layers and be able to access them individually. And obviously, since some of these are all like grouped together, you'll see them in their own grouping folder, and you can rename these by selecting your layer option. So you'll select that group and then tap on the little three dot menu within your layers studio, and then you'll see all of your layers options. You can turn the layer on or off. You can lock the layer so it can't be moved, and then you can adjust the opacity of that layer. But right above the opacity it says group. You can once you tap on that, you can then update the name of that grouped folder to whatever descriptor you want to utilize. So in my case, I'm changing it to red flower, and then I'm going to hit OK, so that way my layers can be a bit more organized. Underneath that is our vector brush options. So I don't use the vector brush as much as I'd like to. I'm hoping this year, as I do more work in Affinity Designer, that I'll use more of these brushes as I'm creating, art pieces. But if we select our vector brush, you have all of these different brushes within the brush studio. You can change the brush type from gouaches to inks to markers. There's a ton of different options. Patterns, pencils, acrylics, dry media, and it gives you these beautiful textures. So I'm going to select this dry gouache too, and then you can just create these beautiful, it looks like hand painted effects, but they're actually vectors, and you can adjust the shape of them using your node tool and whatnot. So these are really helpful and very effective at giving a bit more of like the hand-drawn effect to your vector artwork. And then what's nice is once you've created a shape, you can just go in and change it by selecting the different brush types. So I can go into dry media, and then I can change which, if you do line work with this, it can be really helpful if you want to change the look and feel of the art line work. You can update it here really easily. Another studio here that is really helpful is the Appearance Studio. It'll allow you to select an element or a motif on your artboard, and it'll tell you what kind of stroke it has, if it's filled. You can also go into your options and you can change it in terms of like if you want to utilize your different effects like multiply, brighten, darken, color burn, things like that. And then the next studio below that is our Symbol Studio. We're going to go into more depth with this later on, but this is where you'll find the Symbol Studio. You'll be able to add symbols from different selections, and we'll be able to create our template using the this particular studio. Underneath that is our FX Studio. We looked at this earlier because I wanted to highlight how you're no longer going to be able to revise your settings on the bottom portion of your screen, but instead it's moved to the left side of your screen. But you'll be able to add different types of effects like bevel and emboss. All you have to do is toggle on the little like dot icon to add any of these. So for example, I'm going to select outer glow, and then I'm going to tap on the words outer glow so that I get the settings, and then you can adjust these settings on the left hand side. And what I'm going to do is update my color, and then you can adjust your settings and your color in the upper menu here. So you can tap where the color option is, and then you can change your color, and then you can change the type of effect that it has. So in this case, I'm going to change it to soft light, and then you can go in and adjust your intensity. You can adjust your radius, so how far out it goes, and you can adjust the opacity if you want it more transparent or if you want it darker, and then it gives you a bit of this like nice little kind of like neon looking glow. Underneath that, you'll have a bunch of different adjustment options. You can adjust colors. You can invert your whole file to black and white, edit curves, change your color balance. It's really helpful if you want to quickly revise colors and things like that. So you'll have access to all of your adjustments in this particular studio. And then underneath that is your text options. We didn't add text here, so we'll do that really quick. On the left hand side, your text tool, it is right above your color picker tool, and if you tap on it, it looks like an A with a square around it. Or you might have the T frame text tool, which looks like a T with a square around it. But basically the art text tool just allows you to create text, and it doesn't give you any like parameters. You can just keep going until you press return. But if we utilize the frame text tool, you're going to be able to create a frame, and then your text is only going to be able to go into that frame. So I'm going to type in hello. I'm going to select it all by double tapping or dragging across the text with my Apple Pencil, and you can select. I'll get closer so you can see that again. You can just drag over with your pencil and it'll select your text, or you can just double tap and it'll select it. In the upper menu, you'll have some quick text options, so you can increase your size, you can change your traits, and then you can change your font option here. So I'm going to change it to this contrail. I'm going to increase the size, and then what I'm going to do is go back into our text studio here. You can adjust whether or not it is left aligned, center aligned, right aligned. Make sure this is selected. So once I've selected, you'll see my keyboard pop up, and then you'll get some quick options here. You can cut, you can copy, you can paste. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to paste it. And then as you see, when I paste this in, it doesn't go beyond the boundary that I've created with my text box here. So this is really helpful if you have like specific columns and whatnot that you need to work within, but you can adjust the actual text box itself as well if you want to get more to fit in it. You can also edit, so you have that quick option up top to edit the traits and the fonts and whatnot, but you also have all of those options here in your character studio. You also have all of those options here in your type studio. And what's nice though is that you have some extras here too, so you can add in specific glyphs if you're looking for specific letters and glyphs. You can also go in and change the style of your type and your text here. You can select underline and strikes and things like that, all within these options. You can also add in things like bullet points or numbers and whatnot. So this is where you'll find all those additional traits and specialty elements that you need to use within your characters and your typefaces. All right, so underneath that is our assets studio. So like I said, you have access to this in Affinity 1. It just looks a little different. The icon is different. It's just I've just started really utilizing this more because it makes things a little bit easier to kind of keep track of and coordinate. Just keep in mind that sometimes it could impact, I feel like, the size of your Affinity Designer program file, which could possibly like make your iPad lag depending on how old it is. But I find that it's better to do this than to have a ton of assets on your screen at once, which in turn will make your iPad lag. So this is just a really helpful tool to utilize. Underneath that, you have access to stock photos, and then underneath that is your resource manager. If things become unlinked, files are lost, you can relink them and adjust them here in the resource manager. I don't use that as much in Affinity Designer as I use in Affinity Publisher, but it's good to know that it is here. And then finally, the last thing I want to look at is our Transform Studio. I use this a lot when I'm working in creating my seamless repeats because of adjusting your width, dimensions, and the positioning, the X and Y placement on your screen. So we'll use this when we're building up our template, but then what's nice is once our template is created, we don't have to use this as much, but this is where you can adjust placement. So you can increase your width and your height. Right now I have my dimensions locked, which means it'll keep it in proportion. But if you unlock it, you can adjust your width or your height individually, but I always suggest keeping it locked because it keeps everything in proportion and nothing looks funky. And then you could also adjust your position so it'll move along the X axis and along the Y axis. So it'll move it up and down or left and right. Here is rotation. It'll rotate your elements. And then the shear. Then you also have your alignment options within your transform options. So before I showed you the quick options up top, but you have those same alignment tools here in the Transform Studio. You just have them organized based on horizontal or vertical, and then you can adjust your spacing, etc., all within this. This is probably one of the most used studios, along with my symbols and my layers and my color and stroke when I'm working in Affinity Designer, specifically with surface pattern design.